Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Only Stupid Answers. My name is DJ Woldridge, and we are here today to talk about the Season 2 premiere of The Mandalorian. And, of course, I have with me the amazing Maud Garrett.
Mandalorian.
The Mandalorian, the moderator, the Mandalorian. Maud, say hi to the kids at home. And just in case they don't know who you are, tell them who you are, where they can find you, and what you're up to.
Hi, kids. This is Maud. I am an online host, and I host a bunch of things. And I also run a company called Geek Bomb, which is the place where discussions usually happen about all things geek. I'm a massive Star Wars fan and have previously hosted a bunch of podcasts about it. And I host book clubs and stream video games on twitch.tv/geekbomb as well. So I'm excited to talk about this. And I'm actually doing my own live stream on Twitch and YouTube this afternoon in less than 2 hours. And it is going to be called The Mandalorian because if you flip the N,
you're good to go. You're good to go.
You're good to go.
So be sure to check that out. As Maud was talking about, we are talking about The Mandalorian, Season 2, Episode 1, The Marshal. The Mandalorian is drawn to the Outer Rim in search of others of his kind, and this episode was written and directed by Jon Favreau. This is the first episode of the show. Even though he's the showrunner, this is the first episode of the show he has directed. And we open with Mando out to meet a character named Gor Koresh, who I was shocked to discover is voiced by John Leguizamo. I saw his name in the credits. I was like, wait, what? Oh. And so I had to look into it. It's voiced by John Leguizamo, and he is part of this underground fight club. And of course, literally every person Mando meets, they want to fight him. And a very cool fight scene ensues. And Mando leaves Gor in a precarious spot. Maud, what did you think of this opening sequence and the fight scene that ensued?
I first of all was just like, have we ever seen a Cyclops alien in the Star Wars universe before? That was really interesting. And I keep thinking they showcase more and more wonders of the Star Wars universe. I also don't think we've ever seen a wrestling ring or a wrestling match. And I also don't think we've ever seen Gamorrean's legs before, quite like how we did in the wrestling ring.
Gamorreans are the pig dudes, right?
The Gamorrean, yeah. So the Gamorrean guards are what we saw in Return of the Jedi when Luke went into Jabba's palace. Yeah. And when he went down and where the Rancor was, but it was the Gamorrean guard with the tusks. Yeah. So it was interesting seeing that side of them.
Literally.
Yeah. I've never really. I mean, I kind of got Avatar: The Last Airbender vibes, where it's like when they had all those tournaments of all the elements against each other. Yeah. But it was very, very wrestling ring moment. And then when the Gamorrean guard jumped and fell through a table, I was like, where's the dude in the cowboy hat who's going to be like, wow, did you see that move? Yeah, that was not super Star Wars-y to me. But the fact that it was sort of a luring situation where it's come in just for a chat and then boom, the tables turn. That's Star Wars.
When it was the Gamorrean guards fighting and you saw the little effect when their axes hit, I was like, oof. Apparently not a lot of motion in these costumes. But then when the fight ensued where Mando had to face the people they're working with, Gor Koresh, it was really cool. And I like moments. I criticized the show a little bit last season because we talk a lot about Mando's he's amoral, he's not like one of your good guys, but literally when the chips are down, but when the chips are down, he'll always do the right thing. It's he'll think about it for 2 seconds and then do the noble thing. So when you get moments like this where he leaves Gor Koresh to be eaten by whatever is out there, I was like, cool, I'm into it.
I know, the single Jawa-eyed kind of rodent-y dog things, I don't know, from the growls. Yeah, that was interesting. That was him just being like, you didn't have to do that. You didn't have to, lure me under false pretenses, and that has consequences. Yeah. Good luck getting in alive. Bye. I have money. It was never about the money.
It was never about the money. And it's a reminder that a lot of the planets in the Star Wars universe aren't the most habitable. They're not great places to live.
Tatooine is I really liked seeing the set for this because it felt very authentic. But that's where moisture farming happens because they are a desert planet. So they have to farm for moisture.
Yeah. Speaking of Tatooine, the information he gets from Gor Koresh is that the only other Mandalorian that anybody's ever seen apparently is on Tatooine, which it probably said with me it was like, oh, Boba Fett, and I think that was probably a lot of people as well. And so Mando,
he's still getting digested.
For how long? Thousands of years.
1,000 years.
Long time. So Mando returns to Tatooine and meets Peli Motto, played by Amy Sedaris again. And she tells him that Mos Pelgo is literally across the planet. Like a planet map comes up. She's like, this is us. And then the planet rotates and it's like, this is here. And apparently on a speeder bike, he's able to clear the planet in like an afternoon. Like drive from like Texas to China in like a day.
I know. I figure it's like, Tatooine, the amount of airtime it's gotten throughout the Star Wars universe, like you'd think it would be a lot bigger than it is, but it's almost like the size of the moon.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to talk about the amount of time we've spent on Tatooine in a little bit.
Yeah.
But are you happy to be back on Tatooine? Or are you like, oh, here we go again?
There's a sense of familiarity there. Again, like if the most thriving place is like Mos Eisley Cantina, full of scum and villainy, then it's like deals are made, and there's like obviously they had like the underground crime lord there, but it really is just like a passing through kind of haunt, which makes very little sense for how much is happening there.
Yeah. So he heads to Mos Pelgo and he runs into Cobb Vanth, who I was super stoked was Timothy Olyphant. I knew he was going to be in the season. I didn't expect to see him so early, but I'm a major Justified fan. He's also in Deadwood. Speaking of, the Weequay proprietor that he talks to is played by W. Earl Brown, who is also a Deadwood alum.
Oh, well, that explains the Western vibe. Not an accident.
So what did you think about the resurrection of Boba Fett's armor and the introduction of Cobb Vanth?
I love this elusive figure, and I would love to see sort of like more of these characters throughout the season, where it's like, I mean, you've got, we kind of explained it as like a role-playing scenario where it was like, that's my armor, I'm going to need it back. I paid good money for this armor, you know, and like having that, do they absolutely blow up or do they find, you know, kinship in some sort of way? And the respect that was almost instantly built between the two was really quite interesting to see.
Yeah.
But the unveiling of the armor, especially with like the shot in the head area. I liked that. I liked the repurposing of Boba Fett because he's such an iconic character in the Star Wars universe, even though he had 4 lines of dialogue, not including Clone Wars.
Yeah.
But I mean, you start asking the questions where it's like, how did it get taken off his body? If it's digesting, you know, where's the corpse? How are the Jawas getting in there? Did the Sarlacc spit it out? You know, there's too many questions.
Yeah.
But I do like that it was like, of course, Jawas would find it. They are scavengers, the treasure scavengers of Tatooine. So that kind of checks out in a way. But again, like the symbolic nature of the Mandalorian armor, I really appreciate that sort of like lore behind it, and not anyone can wear it. Like it's a defiling sort of thing for a Mandalore to see.
I of course, like I mentioned, a big fan of Justified, so I love seeing Timothy Olyphant. I also think that this show lives or dies based on its guest stars, because Mando, because he always has to wear the helmet, and there's just not a lot of distinct personality characteristics that he's been given. He's kind of a blank, and so I think the supporting cast has to do a lot of the heavy lifting.
Agree. Yeah, really good point to make. I've never been too bothered by the helmet being on, except when he poured him a drink. I was like, "What you gonna do, bud?"
It'd be great. He just tips it up a little bit.
Yeah, that's the thing. And then and I kind of got distracted in that moment where it's like, so he never takes the helmet off. We never see him eat. We never see him kind of like perspire. Yeah. Like there needs to be slightly more logic around what it means to have a helmet on that entire time.
Yeah.
Like he's never eating.
Yeah.
And I think it's even more prevalent now because we've all been wearing masks on our faces for the last 7 months, and you know the kind of hindrance that it can be, even though it's a very good thing to wear it outside because it's proven to stop germs from being spread and saving lives. but it's like a relatable thing now.
Yeah, as you mentioned earlier, Cobb and Mando are kind of going to go. If it's a video game, he has the option to confront him or not, and they decide to confront each other. But that is all interrupted by the introduction of a crate dragon that eats a bantha, and apparently this is a big problem for the town. And we talked a little bit about this off air. As a kid, I got my hands on one of those like big like Star Wars compendiums. Like, here's all the creatures from all the tie-in novels and stuff, which of course none of this matters anymore because it's all part of Star Wars Legends and that's all been thrown in the trash. But this was not what I remember a crate dragon being, this like sandworm thing. Can you talk about that a little bit?
I'm pretty sure crate dragons were in Knights of the Old Republic, if I'm not mistaken. I'm sure I killed one. And they are known for having a pearl inside of them. So they kind of like make and create this pearl. So they're really, really hard to kill, but there's a reason because they have the pearl inside of them. But from my understanding, they were not an under sand or underground creature. I thought that they did the old waddle. They were more of like a very... it had like almost a triceratopsy kind of body where it would be really quite hefty and reptilian, and it would walk in those slow motions. So to see it kind of skittering under the sand like that, Dune's been pushed back till 2022, but it's like it really gave it a sandworm from Dune kind of vibe, but without the butthole mouth.
without that all-important butthole mouth. But the deal they strike, Cobb and Mando strike, is that if Mando wants the armor, he's going to have to help Cobb. Like you said, side mission, take out the crate dragon, and this puts them at crosshairs with sand people, which one of my favorite little bits in this show is that Mando speaks sand person. He speaks Tusken Raider. I think that's great.
Yeah, I do too. Because they've always been so villainized. I mean, we first came across them in the very first release of Star Wars. And, you know, they tried to pull C-3PO apart. They were very feared. And even when old Ben spoke about it, it's like they'll be back and in greater numbers. And so they were always deemed a threat. And then, of course, we were reintroduced to them when we were on Tatooine again with Anakin. And he came back that his mum had been kidnapped or taken by the Tusken Raiders, which seemed full on. And that's when we saw the mathsifs there as well, which are the dog-like creatures. And he slaughtered all of them. And you kind of were like, this is the first time we saw Tusken children, you know? So it's like, oh, okay, they're actually probably their own people. So I think for me, it's like Jon Favreau's done a really good job of being like, Tusken Raiders were never the bad guys. They were just protecting them, their space. They're nomadic. So their ways of survival are a little bit archaic in that sense. But you're really having sort of like a nomadic species that was going up against the colonizers.
Yeah. And
I think that was a really interesting relationship. And then seeing the Mandalorian's dynamic and relationship with the Tuskens and treating them as equals, you're like, damn, it's not that hard, is it?
Yeah.
And language being the barrier again. So if you can just articulate and learn their language, and communication is then the most important part about establishing this relationship and realizing that they're not the enemy at all.
And it's interesting. What's interesting about that, because that is what ends up having to happen. Obviously, the crate dragon is massive. We learn it spits acid. It's just a real troublemaker. One of my favorite details was when they're like, "Oh, it's an abandoned Sarlacc pit," and Cobb is like, "Oh, there's no such thing." And it's like, "Well, if you eat the Sarlacc," it's like, "Oh, okay, so this thing's serious."
Yes, I know. That was full on.
Yeah, it's not messing around.
There's always a bigger fish.
And so they have to team up with the townsfolk. And for me, I think this is kind of an issue I have with Star Wars in particular, but any big budget action franchise in general, is I feel like it bets on the wrong horse. Like it thinks its most interesting conflict is not. So it spends a lot of time like, how are we going to kill the crate dragon? And I don't know about you, but for me, it's like, well, one of you guys is going to have to go inside there. That's how we've seen this before. That's what's going to happen. I thought the more interesting conflict is less the crate dragon. You're going to blow it up. We're going to see that happen. Is more of like, how do you get these two groups to work together? That's where your story should be. And they spend like 5 seconds like, we got to do this. And one of the people's like, I'm angry about it. And they're like, well, get over it. And they're like, okay. And then we just move on. It's like, that's the interesting part.
Well, I think Cab mainly took the brunt of that when he came into their sort of tribe and refused the water and was offending them. And Mando just had to come in and do some regulating.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of like where the majority of that happened.
Another,
But yeah, the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Yeah. Another missed opportunity to have Mando drink. It would have been great. They pass the cup to him. He lifts up the helmet again.
Because otherwise it's super rude. But I mean, what's more rude? Offering someone the drink when they cannot take off their helmet or not drinking the drink. Yeah, I don't know.
They end up going to confront the Krayt Dragon, and they set up a little mine, essentially, a giant mine, but which of course doesn't work. By the way, a lot of sand people. I saw a few of the townspeople get hurt. Sand people were just being eaten and burnt and just obliterated left and right.
Blah, blah, blah.
What did you think about the confrontation with the Krayt Dragon?
Standard. It was it didn't break any grounds with anything. And I also felt like there was a very, very similar episode last one where the Jawas camp or base got destroyed by this other kind of rhinoceros-y type of animal.
Right,
so we had to kill that, and baby Yoda stepped in. But again, there was something inside of that was really quite precious. So it was kind of like a carbon copy, but just with more people and a bigger dragon. Speaking
of a bigger dragon, it's worth pointing out that I believe that entire sequence was shot on IMAX. If you look, I had to go back over the episode as I was preparing for this, and it's standard widescreen, and then when we get to the Krayt Dragon fight, it goes full screen. Yeah. And so I did a little bit of research, and it appears that was shot in IMAX, and there's some speculation that perhaps this first episode was intended to be launched in theaters, but of course, you can't do that right now.
Yeah. That makes sense because it was epic in scale.
Yes.
Like it was really, really cool. And I could even see that when like the Banthas and the Tusken Raiders and everyone was walking towards sort of like the opening of the Krayt cave.
Yeah.
Kind of like stitching that together where you're like, cool, that's practical on a sound stage. Pretty sure that's either projected or entered in post. But like I'm starting to look at it a little bit more like that because I just think that's fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's worth mentioning. Like I know I'll rip on the show a little bit because I think the writing could be a little bit more ambitious. The character development, some of the world building.
How long was this episode?
About 50 minutes. About 50 minutes.
Yeah, there was time then. There was time.
Yeah. To spend, especially going back into like, because we've spent so much goddamn time on Tatooine that I still don't really like, we know they moisture farm, but like, what do these people do with their free time? How do they relate to the Tusken Raiders?
They drink, they bet, they keep to themselves. Yeah, that's a really good point where it's like Tatooine has such presence but no purpose.
Yeah. And so I think like as much as I would like to see the show maybe evolve some of that more. I got to point out the production design. Like there's a scene, the first time the Krayt Dragon shows up and it's going to eat a bantha, it like zooms in on a bantha and they take the time to like, it has like what cows have, like that little like moisture around the eye.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just like, and even though the conflict with the Krayt Dragon was kind of like you said, like standard issue, it's like, we know what's happening here. It looked cool. Like it did. I can't knock it. It did look cool.
Every time they do practical, like was that Cyclops at the start, was he practical or was he CGI? Because it flitted between and I was like, what is going on? I think it was practical because like the speech was like not always 100% matching. But I really love the practical effects when they do it. Every time we're in a close-up on Yoda, when he's like in the little speeder and his ears are flapping around, like all of that kind of stuff is so great. But then having a life-size bantha practical and like getting up close and personal with this beast, I loved that because it doesn't have the same effect when it's a CGI. You disconnect instantly.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about the big cliffhanger. Cobb Vanth gives Mando the Boba Fett's armor. Mando jets off into the sunset. But I do have to mention the little moment. I felt like it had to be a gag where Mando's on his speeder bike and Vanth like rolls up on his giant phallic speeder bike next to him. I'm like, okay, I mean, all right. All right.
I missed that, but I get it. I was too concerned with what kind of hybrid parts this land speeder / pod racer / speeder bike had, because it had the components of all. I'm pretty sure that front part was a pod racer engine.
That'd be cool.
Again, brings us back to Phantom Menace, where the big pod racer scene, which was one of that and Duel of the Fates was like the best parts of episode 1.
Yeah.
But I really liked going back with that, like all the attention to detail. And if you spot it, you're like, yay.
So the big cliffhanger is as Mando is speeding off, we see Tamora Morrison standing there, and I was going to say like it's probably Boba Fett, but in IMDb he's literally just listed as Boba Fett.
That is stupid.
Wait, so are you hardcore? You want Boba Fett to be dead?
No, he probably jetpacked out of the Sarlacc mouth. But this is like the thing that everyone's been talking about for so long, where it's like, can a Sarlacc really kill him? Blah, blah, blah. Can he really get bopped by like someone who couldn't even see because of the frozen in carbonite, side effects?
There is, I mean, because IMDb is not the most always the most reliable source. It could be another clone. It could be. I know there's some rumors that maybe we'll see some of the clones from Clone Wars. Some of the popular ones pop back up. Rex, we might see Rex, but I feel fairly confident that this is supposed to be Boba Fett, and I think we have a question here from Boilerhuff. Yeah, here we go. What do you think? Let's say it is Boba Fett. What? Let's say it is Boba Fett. What do you think Boba Fett has been up to the last 5 years or so? And also, assuming he's aiming to get his armor back, why would he try now? Surely it would have been easier to take down Vanthan, a trained Mandalorian who now has his armor.
Yeah, I mean, and in a way, Cab kind of built himself up as the sheriff of the town.
Yeah.
So I guess that was like too much of a threat to kind of rustle feathers in. But it would have been really insulting if you were at the top of your game as a bounty hunter, and then you nearly got eaten by a Sarlacc, and then like as you were trying to rebuild your life, you see some other guy wearing your armor that the jar was kind of skifted. You'd be sad in the heart. But I don't know. I mean, I'm excited that Boba Fett can get like a chance at life and storyline and dialogue again. Like that's quite interesting. They went and did an origin version all through Clone Wars, which was really great. Like how he kind of escaped the clones and teamed up with other bounty hunters and kind of learnt that way of life. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
It sounds like with this, I mean, we see it a lot. Our iconic characters that we really grew to love in the original trilogy, we're getting their after story.
Yeah.
So not necessarily. I mean, we've had Han Solo's origin story, but I didn't love it. But yeah, now we're kind of getting the aftermath. So it's the older versions of them all. So that could be cool. I'm apprehensive, but I will walk with trepidation.
I was also interested when Boilerhuff was like, the past 5 years, I was like, well, 5 years. And then I was like, oh, that's right. In this timeline, even though for the actor, it's been actually this actor, he was in the Clone Wars. Tamora Morrison was in Attack of the Clones. He wasn't in Return of the Jedi, but it's like, it's been however many decades since Return of the Jedi's come out. But for that character, it's been like 5 years.
Yeah. This is the thing you have to remember on Tatooine, it ages you super quickly. I mean, Ewan McGregor turned into Alec Guinness in 19 years.
Which is insane.
That kind of sun damage gets ya.
Before we wrap up, remind the kids at home who you are, what you're up to, where they can find you, all that stuff.
Hello, I am Maud Garrett. I run a company called Geek Bomb, which is where the geeky conversations happen. You can follow our Discord for absolutely free. I will post a link to that in Twitter, and you can follow us on Geek Bomb. We have a Twitch channel, YouTube channel, and a Patreon because we are a fan-funded company and our community is amazing. I do a D&D improv show every Monday night on Twitch, and you can find all the episodes for Fungeons and Flagons on the YouTube page as well. And I should be gaming over this weekend. I think I'll play some more Baldur's Gate 3.
Very exciting.
Or Among Us.
I've been hearing a lot about Among Us.
Among Us. Yeah. I'm getting into it.
So you can find me at DJ Talks Trash. You can follow this show at Only Stupid Answers everywhere that matters. But on Twitter, you're going to want to yank the vowels out of stupid. We are also a fan-funded show at patreon.com/onlystupidanswers, where you can watch reviews like this live or unedited versions of reviews like this. Please like, subscribe, all that jazz. Let me know if you'd like to see more reviews of The Mandalorian. We were doing reviews of Lovecraft Country and The Boys. Let me know if this is something you'd like to see us follow through on in the comments down below. And we'll see you all next time.